All right, today we're starting section 2 of chapter 9, which is factoring using distributive property. I'm going to go through two methods of factoring. First one is using distributive property, and it's actually just going backwards from what we normally use distributive property for. And the other one is factoring by grouping, and factoring by grouping is going to be critical later on in this chapter. But anyway, we are just going to start out with is factoring, and it's going to be thinking about these as using the distributive property. So let's say we start out with this like polynomial. Let's say we start out with 24x squared plus 16x. All right, so looking at this, to factor out with the distributive property, we want to look at both 24x squared and 16x and say, well, with 24 and 16, what goes into both 24 and 16? What is the greatest number that goes into 24 and 16, which is actually your greatest common factor? So what is the greatest common factor between 24 and 16? And that is our first step. So what is the greatest common factor between 24 and 16? All right, so let's just start out with the smaller number, 16. Does 24 go into 16? No, it does not. Cut 16 in half. 16 in half, if you do that, that's 8. 8 goes into 16. Does 8 go into 24? Yes. So 8 is your greatest common factor between 24 and 16. All right. So that means we can factor an 8 out. When I factor an 8 out of this, I'm going to be left with a 3x squared and a 2x. But I still have some more things in there. I have an x that I can factor out. So you then need to ask yourself, what is the greatest common factor between x squared and x? All right. What is the GCF between x squared and x? We did this in our last section, and you can just see the thing that you can take out of both of those is actually just going to be an x. So our greatest common factor between 24x squared and 16x is 8x. That is our GCF. So we are essentially taking 24x squared and dividing it by 8x. When we do 24 divided by 8, we end up with 3. X squared divided by x, you end up with 3x. And check your work. Is 8x times 3x 24x squared? Yes, it is. And then again, we are going to factor out an 8x out of 16x. How many times does 8 go into 16? The answer on that is 2. When you have x divided by x, you have a 1. You don't need to show the 1. And you end up with this factored product from 24x squared and 16x. Check your work on these if you need to, and that's the greatest thing with algebra. I mean, you can check your work. Work backwards, check your work. 8x times 3x, 24x squared. 8x times 2, 16x. So this would be your factored answer to 24x squared plus 16x. All right, second thing I said was factor by grouping. And this is going to come out to be very useful later on in this chapter. Factor by grouping. Factor by grouping. Factor by grouping is used when you have 4 terms. There's going to be 4 terms when you factor by grouping. And here's an example with this, 6ax plus 3ay plus 2bx plus by. So essentially what it means is just to look for two groups. Our first group, second group. And we are going to just look at these two terms. What two things, or what can I factor out of these two terms? The 6 and the 3. Factor out of 3. An AX and an AY, they both have an A, so you can factor out an A. And when you're done, you're left with 6 divided by 3 is 2. You take one A out, you're left with nothing, and you're left with just the X. When I factor a 3A out of 3AY, I take the 3 out, the A out, and I'm only left with Y. So I could factor out a 3A out of this, and I'm left with 2X plus Y. Take a look at the second group. What can I factor out of 2BX and BY? I can't factor any numbers out, but they both have a B, so I can factor out a B out of those. I take the B out of the 2BX, and I'm left with 2X. I take the B out of the BY, and I'm left with just a Y. All right, notice the 3A and the B are both multiplied to the 2X plus Y and the 2X plus Y. So then I could factor out this 2X plus Y. So 2X plus Y, and that will be multiplied to 3A. And it's a positive B, so plus B. And that is factor by grouping. We will be using more of this as we get more into the chapter. Again, if you need any assistance, please email me, text me, or we'll meet in our group session.